Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us here today for the first data analytics webinar series. And the first part is a beginner's guide to analytics for management. So the part one, as I mentioned, is a beginner's guide to analytics for management designed to introduce non-technical professionals to the fundamentals of data analytics without the jargon. This session will help you understand how data can be used to make smarter decisions and add value to your businesses. So thank you all for joining us here today. We have a panelist also joining us from South Africa, who I will introduce shortly. And in the meantime, I will share a poll just to have an understanding of where you all stand in data analytics and how often you use data analytics in your daily work to work. So as you guys answer these poll questions, I'd also like to request all of you to introduce yourselves in the chat, say your name, the organization you represent, and where you're tuning in from. I know we have several attendees from all over the world. We have people from South Africa joining and Botswana. So feel free to introduce yourselves and also answer the questions. The first question is just to understand how familiar you all are with data analytics. And the second question is on how often you apply data analytics to your day-to-day jobs. So thank you for joining us. And as we also wait for a few more people to join, I'd like to mention a few things. The recording of this webinar will be uploaded on our YouTube page, BDO East Africa. You can just subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll see all our previous webinars, and all the webinars of this series are also going to be uploaded on our YouTube page. And additionally, for any questions you have throughout this webinar, there's a Q&A tab at the bottom that I'd request all of you to submit all your questions relating to the webinar on the Q&A tab. And any other questions about like household items or anything, you can just submit those questions in the regular chat. So thank you once again, and please answer the poll question and introduce yourselves. Sorry about that. The chat was disabled, but now it's enabled for everyone. So feel free to introduce yourselves. Thank you for joining us today, and hope we'll have a good session. Thank you. Thank you everyone for introducing yourselves in the chat. Thanks, Morris. Thanks, Billy. Thank you, everyone. I see someone from Ghana. James, thanks for joining us. Yajna from Mauritius, thanks. And Anne, thank you for joining us from South Africa. For those who have just joined us, please introduce yourselves in the chat. Say your name, the organization you represent, and where you're tuning in from. And also please answer the poll question so we have an idea of where you all stand in terms of data analytics. Thank you once again for joining us, and we'll begin shortly. So I see a lot of people are somewhat familiar with data analytics, and a lot of you also use it in your day-to-day job daily, and 20% of you use it occasionally. So um, thank you for participating in this poll, and thank you to everyone else who's introduced yourselves in the chat. I see people from all over Kenya, Africa, which is nice to see. Okay, so I see most people have joined. We still expect a lot more people, but in the meantime, I can start with the introduction of the webinar. So today our agenda is to start with the introduction, followed by an introduction to data analytics, followed by the data analytics process, tools, techniques, overcoming common challenges, data accuracy, and we'll end with a Q&A session. And again, please submit your questions in the Q&A tab. Thank you. And I'd like to introduce us to the first panelist, who is Zahir Sheikh, who is a partner of Risk Advisory, Internal Audit and Forensic Services at BDO East Africa offices in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, and Ethiopia. He's a dynamic leader with a high public profile and has been a market leader in his chosen markets and services. He was a regional partner responsible for financial advisory services at KPMG, and he has over 30 years of experience, with 7 years in the UK and 24 years gained professionally at KPMG. And now I'd like to introduce our next panelist, who is Soumya Vadlamani. She's a skilled data analytics and governance professional with 10 years of experience, currently working at BDO East Africa. She specializes in utilizing AI, machine learning, automation, and advanced data visualization techniques to drive actionable insights and improve decision-making processes. Her expertise lies in crafting robust data strategies that align with business goals, ensuring data integrity, compliance, and governance across various domains. With a strong foundation in analytics and a passion for innovation, Soumya continuously explores the intersection of technology and data to implement solutions that not only optimize operations, but also pave the way for future growth. Whether it is through developing AI-driven models, automating complex workflows, or creating intuitive visualizations, her goal is to empower organizations with the tools and insights they need to succeed in an increasingly data-driven world. Thank you for joining us, Soumya. And our final panelist is Chris Govender from BDO South Africa. He's Associate Director leading the audit data analytics practice for BDO South Africa, and he has over 15 years of experience in the fields of data analytics, internal audit, and audit. He sits on numerous innovation committees within the firm and has been a part of a number of global initiatives to enhance audit and internal audit processes through the use of data and technology. His primary goal within BDO is to drive efficiency, enhance quality, and deliver value to the 1,300 projects he works on yearly. Thank you for joining us, Chris. And now I'd like to talk about BDO's global reach. So BDO's seamless global approach allows us to serve clients through a central point of contact, granting access to relevant experience across borders to be where and when our clients need us to. BDO's strength is derived from our structure as a cohesive global network and dedication to internal integration. In each country, BDO member firms are composed of people who are knowledgeable about national laws and business customs and familiar with local and international business methods. As our clients expand globally, our access to our international network can help them do business with a depth of experience in international matters, significant resources, and international client service capabilities. And now I'd just like to briefly go through the services that we offer here at BDO East Africa. And also these are some of the services, or all of the services also offered at BDO South Africa. So we have audit and assurance, which are statutory audits of financial statements, audits of donor-funded projects, special purpose audits and reviews, and much more. And then we have the business service and outsourcing department, which is accounting and bookkeeping, compilation of statutory annual reports, managing reporting. And as you can see, there's a lot more services that we provide. And then we also have taxation services. And lastly is advisory services where data analytics sits. We have the internal audit and risk management, management consulting, corporate recovery, corporate finance, transaction advisory services, forensic investigations, technology advisory, and business intelligence. And that's all from me. And now I'd like to hand it over to Chris Govender to introduce data analytics. Thank you.
Thanks, Meha. Welcome, everyone. As Meha has mentioned, this kicks off our 5-part webinar series, and today's session solely focuses on a beginner's guide to data analytics for management. We'll then focus on more industry analytics in the agribusiness, and then part 3 is on consumer business, part 4 being the manufacturing and distribution, and then we'll wrap it up with financial services. So please be on the lookout for those communications so that you can register for those parts. But for now, I'd like to take you through the introduction of our session today. Okay, so before we kick off today's session, I'd like you to think about the impact that data has had on our lives. Think of YouTube as an example. Ever wondered how YouTube is able to recommend more or less the content that you are looking for? Or when you're scrolling through a website and an ad pops up and something you actually searched for on Google just a few days earlier. Well, that's all through the power of data, machine learning, and AI. For today's session, however, we're not going to delve into the complexities of these advanced topics. You're here to understand what is data analytics and how can it be practically leveraged in your day-to-day roles, be it at an operational level or strategic level. Now, on screen, you'll see a few key important areas that we believe as to why data is important to your organization. So you'll see root cause analysis, understanding behaviors, be it internal or external stakeholders, improving processes, guiding strategic direction, as well as enabling better decision-making. Okay, before we get ahead of ourselves though, let's take a trip down memory lane. Does the picture on screen ring any bells? Now, this is something that you would have seen in the 80s, 90s, perhaps even in the early 2000s. You're going to see files, boxes, and boxes of room-filling files and documentation. Now, imagine trying to perform any sort of analysis back then, be it your root cause analysis, your understanding stakeholder behaviors, improving processes, guiding strategic direction, or enabling better decision-making. Imagine the issues you'd be faced having to collate all of that manual documentation to get to those answers. Now, picture your head of department coming up to you and asking you for the sales figures for this year versus last year. Or how many customers did we have today versus 3 years ago? Or how many customers did we lose in that period? All of that information had to be sifted through from these files, or a manager had to place reliance on a salesperson's memory. But what happens when you have 200 salespeople across your organization, across regions? This creates a massive issue, as anything we are trying to achieve becomes potentially inconsistent and subjective. Now, through the advancements in technology, we are now able to collect, store, and interact with information very differently as data. Take an example, sales analysis. What are sales figures over the last 3 years? How many customers did we lose or gain in that period, and why? Through various technologies implemented within your organization, we are now able to draw upon a lot of this information. Think your invoice listings, your sales history by product, your production schedules, your website traffic reports, your customer satisfaction scores, or even comments on your products or services on social media. So it's pretty easy to answer some of your questions. What are your sales figures over the last 3 years? Simple. Go to your ERP, print sales report, given whatever period you're looking for. What about how many customers have we lost or gained? Another fairly simple exercise, but may require a little bit more digging in terms of collating information across 1 or 2 systems or departments. But what about why did we lose these customers? And this is where data analytics has a massive part to play. This is where we collate data from multiple systems to enable us to draw insights. Now, I'm going to leave you on this slide with the definition of data analytics. Data analytics is the collection, transformation, and organization of data with the aim of examining data sets, finding trends, and drawing conclusions about the information that they may contain. So how do we, now that we've got a fairly basic understanding of what data analytics is, I thought instead of giving some theoretical example, let's see how we use data analytics within BDO, specifically within my own team. So just to paint a picture quickly, our BDO South Africa data analytics team, we touch on roughly 1,400 projects. I know in my CV up front, it said 1,300. That's now grown to 1,400 already since 2 weeks ago, with a relatively small team of 16 people. Now, we are also expected to grow between 25%, and that's a conservative figure. We anticipate the number to be actually closer to 40%. So the question that leadership has put forward to me is simple. It's how do we create further efficiencies? Chris, how do we do more with less? And given the economic environment currently, this is a question that's being asked across organizations, across industries, which is how do we do more with less resources that we have available? So in order for me to answer this question for leadership, we needed to perform our own analysis. And this is where data enters, data and data analytics. So our first point of call was, let's unpack our planning data sets as well as our timesheet data sets. So planning data sets pretty much contained a lot of information on the day-to-day projects that we run. Think start date, end date, what are we doing for a particular engagement, who are the managers, who are the partners, what tests are we running, etc. Now, on the timesheet side of things, which is a different system altogether, this information is pretty much our team's timesheets. So this is, what is my team doing on an hourly basis? What are we spending our time on? What projects? And we have that information available throughout the year. So in order to create any meaning behind this and perform our own root cause analysis, we needed to bring these two very different data sets together. And you'll see a couple of screenshots on your right-hand side of some of the visualizations that we've put together. These are just two. There being a lot of sensitive information, I've only shared 2 screenshots, but the analysis on Power BI actually expanded to about 8 different dashboards that we've built. So what did we understand? Now that we've got this data, we've painted a pretty picture on these dashboards, what did we actually get to? And what does that assessment comprise of? So there's 3 key things. I mean, we've actually come up with probably 10 or 15 initiatives, but I'm going to focus on 3 key things that we've picked up just through the use of data analytics. One is 70% of our portfolio comprises of 5 key services. And because the volume and the standardization of these processes, we are now able to throw robotic process automation initiatives to try and create further efficiencies within this process. So the first thing that I can take to leadership is we have a technology efficiency initiative on hand. Now, outside of that, the projects that seem to take the longest to complete, it appears that we could reduce time spent by refining our operational processes to manage bottlenecks. Now, what does that mean? So we've got our technology initiative. The data tells us that we actually need to rework some of our processes. So our standard operating procedures, policies, as well as our methodology. So when we start delving into the way of work, that needs to be re-engineered. And through our analysis, we were able to develop a project plan to support that operational efficiency initiative. Lastly, for complex projects, we seem to be relying on a few key individuals, thus resulting in another bottleneck. So that now points to a people issue. So do we hire new skill sets, or do we start upskilling our team to be able to handle some of these more complex initiatives that we have in the go? And this very quickly paints a picture. Through analyzing two data sets, our planning data sets, our timesheet data, we were easily able to come up with 3 key areas that we would like to focus on in it as a team to help move us forward to meet that objective that leadership has put forward, which is how do we do more with less? Now that's the quantitative side of things. On the qualitative side, remember I mentioned people? The fact that because we are tight on resources, the next step is how do we start creating development plans and training plans for our people to try and close a skills gap? So with that, we are now able to create new and exciting opportunities for our own staff to grow further in those areas that we've identified. Okay, now that we've honed in a little on where data analytics assist us, but let's zoom out of it. Now, this is a very busy slide, so I'm not going to take you through everything, but there's a few key messages that I'd like to leave you with this slide. So what you see on screen is our data-driven organization maturity model. So it's a five-stage process where we start from unstructured, move up to localized analytics, stage 3 is analytical aspirations, stage 4 analytical companies, and then stage 5 insight-driven organization. Now, key thing to remember there, notice I didn't say data-driven organization, I deliberately said insight-driven organization. Now, on the 2 ends of the scale, stage 1, think about the first line that we put forward, where we have files and boxes and archives of manual documentation. That would pretty much be a stage 1 company, where we have a lot of unstructured data, where it's not easily accessible or reliable. And then on the opposite end of the scale, stage 5, think your YouTube, think Google, think your big tech companies at this point in time. So that'll give you a good understanding of what stage 1 is and potentially what stage 5 is. But the message that I want you to take away from this is not to worry too much about the stages. The key thing is, in order to move up from a stage 1 organization through to a stage 5, there's key 3 questions that we ask. One is, what data? And when it comes to data, it speaks to availability, accessibility, and reliability. So if we think about our stage 1 company, is it available? Yes, there's a million boxes. Is it accessible? Now that's a different question, because how easily accessible is that information for us to draw some level of insights? Is it reliable? That's also open-ended. Because it's a manual documentation, it's subject to human error, as well as potentially lost documentation within the process, etc. Now, the next question that we need to ask, actually, wait, let me explain from stage 1. So we've got what data. Now, as you move up from stage 1, 2, 3, and 4, the accessibility, availability, and reliability starts increasing. So at a stage 1 level, availability, accessibility, and reliability is pretty low. As you start moving to stage 5, your availability, accessibility, and reliability is very high. Now that's only one component, because we can have all of this information, but it doesn't mean we're a stage 5 insight-driven organization. That leads us to the next question, which is, how are we using data? I'd like to draw your attention to the figure 3, which is on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. With that question, we define analytics from descriptive all the way to prescriptive. Descriptive is what happened. So if you take your example of your sales information, we've lost, how many customers have we lost over the last 3 years? If I said 10 and we've gained 20, that's a fact. That's something that happened. It's based on the historical information. So that gives me my entry point, which is what happened. I lost 10 customers, I gained 20. Now, when we start asking questions as to why, that's when we move into diagnostic analytics, which is why did it happen? And as soon as we start looking at the why, the information that's needed may come from various departments within your organization. And if you look at figure 2, which is an example organizational structure on the upper right-hand side of your screen, that information may not just simply reside within your marketing and sales. It might be with your production, it might be with your customer support, it might be with your finance team. And that's when we start moving up the maturity level. It's not just about what data, it is how we are utilizing it. Now, as we start moving to stage 4 or the predictive analytics, that's where we start asking what will happen. So this is us taking our historical data, creating some level of meaning, and now being able to predict what could happen in the next 6 months, 12 months, 5 years, whatever your organization sees fit. The last stage, which is probably a level of maturity where we typically see in stage 5 organizations, is prescriptive. What should I do? Now, in order to get to that level, let's think your YouTube. Let's go back to that example. When you're clicking a like on your YouTube video, there's a decision being made behind the scenes. If Chris likes football videos and mindfulness videos, let's give him more content related to that. So that's where the what should I do comes into place, as well as decision automation. Because as soon as I'm adding a thumbs up, it's going to give me more of that content. If I we'll put the thumbs down or a dislike button, that obviously triggers a decision that's made behind the scenes as well. But the long and short of that is, how do we move organizations from a stage of hindsight, which is purely looking at historical information, through to being more foresight? So how do we start moving into that predictive and prescriptive phase within your analytics maturity model? Yeah. Okay, sorry. So what you see on screen quickly is we're running a quick poll question on where do you think your company fits within, is it unstructured? Just to give you a little more context, localized would be within a specific department. Analytical aspirations would be you starting to utilizing it, you're starting to use data analytics, but as well as across departments. Analytical companies being, okay, we've got data across all our departments and we are pretty good at navigating and bringing that information together to create decisions. And then stage 5 being insight driven. Remember, tech companies, Google, Yahoo, YouTube, etc. Are we using it to make insight driven approaches? So we're just going to run that poll and I'll hand over to Soumya.
Thank you, Chris, for a very insightful introduction to data analytics. And I'll leave this poll for 1 minute before Soumya takes over on the methodology of data analytics.
Thank you, Meha. Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being a part of the webinar today. I'll be walking you through the methodology we use in data analytics, a few tools and techniques that you can get started off with, and how to overcome common challenges and ensure that there is data accuracy. I'll be walking you through all of this with the help of an example so that you all can relate to it better. So let's get started with the 6 fundamental steps of the data analytics process, guiding you from initial inquiry to making informed decisions. The first one being define the question, where you start by identifying the core problem or objective on how you want to solve the problem, or what are you trying to understand from the data? What's the end goal, basically? The second one is collect the data. So you gather relevant data that you need from various sources. Could be one source, could be multiple sources. Like Chris had mentioned in one of the analysis that he did internally, it was from various sources. And then you ensure that it aligns with the questions and that you're aiming to answer. The third one is you clean the data. Just collecting the data is not enough. You need to make sure that the data is clean. There are no gaps, there are no missing information, and there's no error, so that your analysis is accurate and you're able to get a good visualization out of it and make a good decision too. Because at the end of the day, wrong piece of data can lead you to make wrong decisions. The fourth one being analyzing the data. Now, this is where you apply all your statistical methods, where you use algorithms to uncover patterns and trends and create a visualization over here so that your data can tell a story. Data interpretation is where now you run with the story and you try to interpret where the anomalies, how the trends are going, off seasons, on seasons, and try and see why there's an issue in the place that there is. And then the last step, and this is the end, where you're making a data-driven decision, just to make sure that so once you have the story ready, once you know where the anomalies are, you make a decision based on the kind of data you see. In terms of if you see an upward trend, then which means you're doing good, so you keep doing it better. Or if you see a downfall and there's a reduce in sales, then you'll have to probably take other decisions so that your sales go up. I will be walking you through a small story in the next slide. It's about a sweet shop that's owned by SS. Yeah, so SS runs a small bakery, and they specialize in selling cupcakes. So recently, she noticed that there's a decline in sales, and she wanted to understand why this is happening and how she can improve her business. So she decides to use data analytics process to find out why this is happening. And to the previous slide that I've just shown you, I will relate the story and we'll go step by step on what she does on each of those 6 target points that I spoke about. So the first is define the question. SS begins to clearly define the key question that she wants to answer. Why are the cupcakes sales declining at the SS Sweet Shop? She also considers related questions like, are certain cupcake flavors selling well compared to others? Is there a challenge in the customer preferences or the behavior? Are the other cupcake shops selling, having any sale that's going on, which is why there's a decline? Also, in terms of which days are our cupcake sales down and which days do we have the most sales? So defining these questions helps her focus her data collection and analysis on specific issues affecting her business. So by doing this, the first is clarifies her objective. So she set the objective for doing the data analysis, and it ensures the entire process is directed towards answering a particular problem, which is her declining sales. The second, it also guides data collection. So she knows exactly what kind of data she needs to do this analysis. So she'll have to collect her sales data. She'll have to probably collect the trends. She'll have to collect data on which other bakeries are doing sales to be able to come to this analysis. It also helps streamline processes. Because she has focused questions, she can streamline the data collection, she can streamline the cleaning of the data and analysis processes by only dealing with the data that matters most to her. The next being, it also simplifies the reporting because you have a set of questions well defined, and it's easy to communicate the findings and their implication to the others as the results are directly related to a specific business need or concern. And it also aligns the stakeholders because they're all on the same page, and the questions are well defined, and everyone understands the goal of the analysis, which facilitates better collaboration and communication throughout the process. The next step that she follows is to collect the data. So she collects the data that could provide insights into the problems. She gathers sales data that's probably sitting in her database over the past few months, including details of the flavors sold, the quantity, the time of the sale. She also collects customer feedback, which could be in form of a physical form that are sitting in the file, or if she's digitized and then an online form, surveys and responses, and also things from the web in terms of people leaving reviews on Google reviews and stuff like that. So how does collecting the data help her? It helps her collecting data from relevant sources by providing the raw material needed for the questions that she's asking. And it also ensures comprehensive insights by gathering data from various sources to ensure that all relevant aspects of the questions are covered. And it supports valid conclusions, which helps her give accurate and complete data collection is for drawing valid insights out of it. The third step that she follows is cleaning the data. So if you can see, we have a few bubbles over there. You remove the duplicates, you correct any errors that you have in the data, you ensure that the data is consistent, you have proper date formats, and then you merge the data from different sources. So as explained, in case she was getting a few stuff from her database, a few data from web analytics, that's from the Google reviews, and a few from forms, physical forms, she'd have to first digitize the physical forms, making sure that they're available. And then after that, download whatever reviews that she's getting from the Google reviews, and then collate them with the data that she has in her database to be able to bring out insights. So in this process, to make sure that they're all merged and synced together well, she has to clean the data and make sure that there are no duplicates. It improves accuracy and also prevents misinterpretation, and ensures that the analysis is streamlined. The next part is analyzing the data. Now, this is where she tries to tell a story. I've created 2 sample charts that you can see on your screen. One is for the complaints. So these are what she's downloaded from her Google Forms. And as you can see, Saturday, Sunday, her complaints are the highest. And the second chart is a line chart where you're seeing a comparison between her sales and the sales between her competitors who are A and B. And if we see, her sales are least on Tuesdays, and on Saturdays and Sundays, her sales are less and the competitor sales are more. This could tell us 2 stories. One is that probably the competitors have a sale at that point of time. And also maybe Tuesdays, there's a certain flavor that she doesn't have, which is why they're going to the competitors. So what does this tell us? It tells us that it helps you identify the pattern. So with the line graph, you're able to identify which days in particular our sales are low, her sales are low, and which days they're high, which days they're in par with the competitor. And also in terms of the complaints, you can tell by the number of complaints that she's getting and how the pattern is throughout the week. So as I was speaking about in the previous slide, you can see magnifying glasses over the places where we have the issues. So you have the one for Saturday and Sunday because the complaints are the highest, and also for Tuesdays where our sales are the least. So she tries to understand why it is like this, why Tuesdays she has no sales, and why Saturdays and Sundays her complaints are highest amongst the other days of the week. And then she digs deep down, could be because of more number of customers, less staff during the weekends, which is why she's not able to serve them. And this is how she connects it to her business goals. And And also could be, like I mentioned, some sale that's going on in the competitor's shop, which is why they're going there in comparison to coming here. And these are the kind of interpretations that you can make out of these two simple graphs that I've created. And then out of this, we're going to make data-driven decisions. So with the insights, what can she possibly decide to do to better her business? One is allocate resources, because Saturday, Sundays, she has a busy season, so she allocates more resources to it. She can add new products so that it's more exciting to the customers and they come to her instead of going to the other competitors. And maybe a weekend, because she has many customers coming in, she can also run offers and discounts so that rather than going to the competitor's place, they come to her. So basically, the data-driven decision helps you optimize your resources, and it also helps you in making improved decisions in the whole process of. Going to the next slide, I'll be talking about a few tools that you can utilize to do data analytics. So we can start off with a simple Excel, and there are a lot of things that you can do for data analysis in Excel. Just like a simple pivot table, just to summarize the data. You can also go up to the charts and the graphs level, and you can use various functions and formulas in the Excel file itself for a condition. You can also do a condition formatting for where you have duplicates, making sure that to remove duplicates. Excel can be a good tool for your first level of data analysis, and it's a simple tool. It doesn't need a lot of learning. The next one is Google Sheet. It's almost like an Excel. It's just that it's online. And it's also collaborative because multiple people can work on the same sheet at the same time. It also has built-in charts where you can just build quick visualizations out of it. And the best thing is you have, it's integrated with Google Analytics for marketing data. Power BI and Tableau are more of BI tools that you'd need to install, which need a little bit of learning, but they're easy to use because it's just about drag and drop. So just 1-2 sessions of trying to play around with it will help you create visualizations out of it. They're both user-friendly, and the good thing about it is you can get data from multiple sources, whether it's data source, whether it's Excel file, whether it's text file, and then you can merge all of them and then create great visualizations. Also, they're pretty interactive, so you can go from the highest level to the lowest level using these two tools. Us here at BDO, we use a lot of Power BI, but we also use a lot of Excel to do our basic cleanup and to create also pivot tables. Moving on, we're talking about a few techniques that you can use. One is descriptive statistics. The first one is descriptive statistics, where in relating it to the SS Suite shop, she starts by getting a quick summary of her data. That's during the data collection. So she calculates the averages, the counts, the standard deviations to understand the key metrics like average sales per year, the customer purchase frequency, also per day analysis. So that's where this descriptive statistics comes in. Then we have the trend analysis, where you're plotting the sales data against the line charts. This is the second chart that I'm speaking about. So she can identify the trend and see week data, month data. You can also go ahead to see like a seasonal data and see the increase and decrease in the sales based on it. The third one being scenario analysis. Now, this is where SS tries to describe various scenarios that we have, and the best case, worst case, most likely case scenarios to see the changes in variables, maybe like pricing, the customer footfall, promotion offers that how competitors are offering, so on and so forth. The fourth one is data aggregation, where she uses functions like SUMIF, COUNTIF, concatenate, average, all of these functions to aggregate the data and easily calculate totals such as number of cupcakes sold by flavor, total sales during specific timeframes, etc. And then the last is data merging, which is the most crucial part, where she combines data set from multiple data sources to record the data and to get customer feedback and to make informed decision out of it. So by using these techniques, she's equipped to uncover the insights needed to diagnose the sales decline. and make informed decisions to boost a business. Before we go to the next slide, we'll have a quick poll on some of the most common challenges that you are facing while adopting data analysis. We'll give you about a minute to answer the questions, and then we'll move on with the next slide. Thank you so much for that. We've got quite some response, and I can see that most of you have technical expertise and inconsistent data as the issue. So this is what we're going to speak about on the next slide. Some of the most common challenges that one faces while adopting data analysis. First is data overload. What do you do when you have data overload in terms of when you're overwhelmed by the amount of data that's available with you? To avoid this, you'll have to focus on the key metrics that directly align with your business objectives. So you'll have to make sure you note down the most important data points in terms of, so if you're looking for decline or increase in sales, then you have the sales related details, the breakdown of, so in case of SS, the cupcake flavors, the days of the week and stuff. But in case you're looking for a variety of customers, to see what kind of customers you're getting in, what industry, or where are they from, which areas are they coming in from, you can look at data like your shop location. You can look at data like the customer age profile. So by really narrowing down into what you're trying to get out of the analysis, it'll help you filter out on the data overload. The second is technical expertise, which most of you are saying is an issue. I think you should start small and simple. You can start with basic tools like Excel and Google Sheets, like we've previously mentioned, and gradually build your skills over it. And as you become more comfortable, you can explore more advanced tools and techniques. The third is resistance to change. So, adopting to data-driven decision-making is common, especially if the benefits aren't immediately clear. Overcome this by starting with small data-driven initiatives that can quickly demonstrate positive results. And then those early wins can help build confidence and encourage broader adoption of data-driven practices. The fourth one being a time constraint. If you have time constraints and if you feel like data cleaning takes too long, just collecting the data and gathering the data takes too long, you can automate your daily tasks, daily routine data entry, and the reporting tools. Once you create the reports and they automatically are refreshed, then you shouldn't have an issue to that. And the last being inconsistent data, which is the second most prominent issue that a lot of you have. You need to establish data governance practices, make sure you have validations while inputting the data to ensure that there's data accuracy. And you need to establish standards for data entry and have regular audits for your data. Moving on to the next slide, I want to expand more on data accuracy and why it's important. First is, if you have inaccurate data, you wouldn't be able to get meaningful insights out of it, and you'll be making wrong decisions based on the inaccurate data. The second one being double check your sources. Make sure you're getting them from the right sources, because there's no point of you doing analysis on data that's invalid or coming from the wrong source. Again, your visualizations could go wrong and your decision making at the end of the day would be affected again. Make sure you have validation techniques to ensure that there's consistency and the data that you're transforming is correct and is giving the right insights. In the sense that if you're doing a sum of based on the cupcake flavors, make sure that the amount that you're getting, do a validation to make sure that the amount that you're getting is correct and it tallies with what you have in your raw data so that you know your visualizations are correct. And the fourth is you automate for consistency, just to make sure that your processes are smoother, and then you don't spend too much time cleaning data and collecting data. Whatever is possible, use automation tools, use small automations to make sure that the data is flowing well from one point to the other, and also is merging well so that at the end of the day, your visualizations are good. With this, we're done with our presentation and we're now open to questions.
Thank you, Soumya, and a big thank you to Chris as well for this very insightful webinar on data analytics. And a big thank you to BDO South Africa as well for this collaboration. So in the meantime, I'd like to request all of you to take some time to put in some of your questions in the Q&A tab, and we have our expert panelists, Soumya and Chris, to answer any of your questions. And if you have any other questions on the future webinars and what you'd like to know about, please do also type in your questions relating to that. Thank you.
Hi, Sunila. I see you have a question about how do I go about incorporating data analytics in my daily job. To answer this, we will need more insights on what you do on a day-to-day basis. But just to give you a quick overview, you can pick up what you do or what data you collect on a day-to-day basis on Excel, in case there are Excel sheets that you maintain, or in case there's a software that you work on, you'd kind of know what sort of data you deal with. And then based on that, you can try and decide what kind of decisions can be made out of this. It's really difficult to say over the top of your mind, not knowing what you actually deal with, but I think this is the best way we can put it forward. So you see with what data you have, what kind of decisions you make, or with what you do on your day-to-day basis, are there any decisions that you make? Is there a better way of putting it forward? Or is there a better way that you can explain it to the end users?
Spot on,
Thank you,
Soumya.
Soumya.
So maybe just to come in
Chris,
as well.
if you'd like to add something to that.
Yes, thanks, Meha. Can you hear me? So I think to answer this question, Sanela, the first question would be, what is your objective? What are you trying to achieve? So once you understand your objective, the next question would be, okay, to support my objective, what information do I have at hand? Now, when we say information, it's what data you have available to you to help you make decisions in line with that objective that you're trying to get to. So once you understand the objective and the available information, The tools and technique side, that's easily where Soumya and myself, from a team perspective, can come in and potentially advise. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We have a few more questions, so let me start with the first one. Once a small organization handles complex and multiple data, can you recommend simplified tools, techniques, and methodology they can use without hiring expensive workforce?
Thank you for that question. So recommended simplified tools and techniques, like I'd mentioned, you can start off with Excel to start with the data analytics. You can create simple pivot tables. You can have simple formulas like SUMIFs, COUNTIFs to help you with the analytics. I think this is a good start. In case you have people who are a little more hands-on, you can also leverage R, or maybe Power BI would be a good start. You can start off with the free version of Power BI and create visualizations out of the data that you have.
Thank you, Soumya. Chris, I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that, or I can move on to the next question.
Yeah, maybe within the video essay team. So your first point of call is obviously the technology that you use. So if you use Excel on a daily basis, start there. So as Soumya has mentioned, it could be just coming up with a few formulas to help you recalculate certain things within your daily job. And from there, you can start looking at, if you've got a Microsoft stack, Power Automate is something that you can look at as well, because a lot of our automations within the Microsoft stack, we utilize Power Automate. Now, if you want to go robotics process automation, which is a bit more advanced, UiPath is something that's also available in the market. It's something that we've utilized in our space as well. And all of those things you can easily Google to understand a bit more about those tools and technologies.
Thank you, Chris. We have quite a few questions. Thank you all for sharing. So the next question is, how could we overcome the problem when making the reports ready when you encounter data overload near the deadline? Chris, would you like to take this question? Or Soumya?
Yeah, happy. Sorry, I'm trying to just locate the question sorry quickly.
Sorry, there's some that are in the chat, but I'd like to request everyone to post your questions in the Q&A tab so it's easier for us to navigate these questions.
Okay, so may I just repeat the question quickly, please, for me?
Yes. So the question is, how can we overcome the problem? Sorry, I'm getting lost as well. How can we overcome the problem with making the reports ready when you encounter data overload near the deadline?
Okay, so remember in my example, we spoke about process. So in order to create efficiencies, we needed to really look at the process and the timing of receiving information. So let's say it's close to a reporting deadline and you understand that the bottleneck is, how do I now convert 50 reports? My deadline is tomorrow. Timing is important. So then the first question is, can we obtain that information sooner in the process? That's step one. Step two is, if there's any formulas or any inputs to create your report that's standardized, that's potentially where technology will come in. So how do I now consolidate 50 Excel spreadsheets into a single spreadsheet? And that's a question that's something that technology or an advisory firm can assist you with. Now, outside of that, as I mentioned, two key things: process, then you look at the technology, and once you're able to identify timing, you should be able to come up with an answer as to how do you remove that bottleneck going forward. I'm not sure if that answers the question.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, I hope that answered the question. If you have a follow-up question, please ask it in the Q&A tab. So there's a few more questions. So are there any softwares that we can use to get the basics of data analytics? And then another unrelated to the webinar question is about CPD training hours. I'll just type it in the chat. So the main question is, are there any softwares that can be used to get the basics of data analytics?
You can definitely use YouTube to get the basis of data analytics for sure. But I think it's also related to your day-to-day work and what you generally deal with. In case you know that they are decisions that need to be made on your data, it automatically builds up the analytics part for you, because you know that you have a set of data and then this is the end goal and this is what you have to show out of this data. So the process of transforming your raw file into the decision making is data analytics, really. Chris, if you'd want to add something to that.
No, Soumya, happy. It will be dependent on the tools that you're currently using within your firm. Within our firm, there's many tools that we use as well. We use IDEA. Because we're an audit firm, IDEA made sense. And Excel, as I mentioned, is always a great starting point. Power BI. And just to give context, I mean, just my background, I didn't start off in data analytics, just like you. I was an accountant, so I needed to understand what tools and techniques can be used. And in order to do that, Google and YouTube become your best friend. So as Soumya has mentioned, I think research is needed. Once you have a lot of information at the tips of your fingers, that's when you are able to then understand what tools to use, because it can work from basic toolkits that can assist you in your data analytics journey, all the way through scripting tools where you can use SQL, Power, Python, R, etc.
Thank you, Chris. So we have a lot of questions to get through, so I'll just move on to the next question. And the panelists will also have the option to type the answers for some of the questions that require just short answers. We have another question about someone with no background who's interested to learn data analytics. So what other platforms can I get more learning insights that have data I work with? I've been learning from LinkedIn Learning, especially the Excel part of data. And as Soumya mentioned, YouTube is definitely a good platform. And if Chris, you want to add anything, or I can move on to the next question.
No, happy. I think LinkedIn Learning has a great basis. We within the firm as well use LinkedIn Learning for our resources. My guidance around this is, rather than learning 5 or 10 different tools, master one as a start. So if you're choosing to use Excel, master Excel. That'll give you a good foundation. Then once you reach Excel's limitations, then start exploring other tools and techniques. But typically there'd be 2 things that I focus on. One is, if you're focusing on Excel, the next thing is, how do I visualize that data? So if you're within the Microsoft stack, perhaps consider Power BI, and that'll be a good place to start, because everything is in the same environment.
Thank you. So we have a different question here. Is it mandatory to inform clients before you use data analytic tools on their data? And what are the regulations for data analytics?
So
Soumya, you can go ahead.
When you have client data, I'm sure you must have already signed non-disclosure agreements and all for you to get the client's data. So no, I don't think so. It's mandatory to inform them before using their data in the data analytics tools. And regulation on data analytics, we don't have anything specific, but of course the Data Protection Act is enforced onto the data analytics that we have, and general data protection regulation.
Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
to add on to that.
And Chris, if you'd like to add something.
Yes, so just to add on to that, so if you're utilizing tools within your firm, you'd also need to make sure you stick. So if there's an NDA, non-disclosure agreement that's being signed, so that's when data governance within your firm becomes a massive consideration. Because if it's consumer data, you might be regulated by GDPR, or within the South African environment, it's PUPI. So where you store that information and leverage off that information that you got from your clients is extremely important, because that's something that you should consult with your IT team in order to give you guidance in terms of where that data is stored, the security around that data, etc.
Thank you. Okay, we have a long question from Robert. Thank you for sending in your question. It's in the Q&A tab for the panelists and anyone else who wants to refer. What are the most effective methods for analyzing non-numerical data, such as text or images? And how can organizations implement real-time data collection and analysis from social media platforms to generate actionable insights? My thought is, if we can guide the production based on social media trends, we have high chances of producing right amount based on demand. Second question is, what is your recommendation to build sustainable internal teams who can run analytics? So we can give the panelists some time to answer this question.
So the best way to analyze non-numerical data is with the AI ML that's coming up right now, because they're not stored in a structured format. That would be the best way. And to implement real-time data collection and analysis from social media platforms, Google Analytics is a good way to do it, because it's directly integrated. So you just need, you don't need to do any coding or anything of that sort on it. I think there's a direct plugin that you can use over there. And I completely agree when you say that if we can get the production based on the social media trends, you have a high chances of producing the right amount, which is totally agreeable. But also for analyzing non-numerical data and text and images, you can also reach out to us, because that's something we do regularly. We can probably have a chat and speak about it. And to build sustainable internal teams who can run analytics, I would say start small, start with 1 or 2 people. If you have tools that you're already using, make sure you hire people in those particular areas. If you don't, but you have a thought on these are the areas that I want to cover, like you'd mentioned about social media trends and all, you can probably hire somebody who's good in Google Analytics or marketing analytics to help you out with that. And this will set a base for you to set up a team.
Thank you, Soumya. We'll take the next question by Anthony. Thank you for sending in your question. Due to the technical nature of analytics, most consumers of the results may not fully understand the technical nature of the process, data inputs, tools, etc. What are your views on data storytelling and its importance in the overall objective of using data to drive decision-making, better decision-making?
I think storytelling is the most important part of data analysis, because it's what it is what speaks to the audience, and it is what makes it easier for the audience to understand. So you might have many things that you want to see out of the visualization, but then if it doesn't tell you a story, then you're not communicating what you want to. Also, like I'd mentioned in the SS for the sweet shop, her goal was to see the downward trend for the sales. But if she was not able to communicate in relation to the customers, in relation to her competitors, in relation to the flavors of the cupcake she had and all, she wouldn't be able to come into those decisions that she's made about having sales, hiring more people to help her in the job, and also I think the most important part of data analysis is the storytelling visualization. Chris, would you like to add something to this?
Thanks, Soumya. Maybe on the technical side of things. So as an end user of any visualization, I think it's also important that the source is known. And I'll tell you why. If I fully appreciate or understand how the information flows from the various sources into that dashboard that's painting a picture, that gives me an understanding of any potential limitations behind that visualization, number one, as well as when I'm doing my root cause analysis. That's when I can start asking deeper questions. So if it's a sales related issue, that's potentially something that I need to revisit my sales information on my ERP. If it's production related, as an example, that information resides somewhere else. Now, then I can ask very pointed questions, as in, is the problem with am I coming up with the correct decision based on what the visualization is telling me, based on the source information that has been provided? So that's the technical side of it. And in order to paint that picture, as Soumya has mentioned, the data storytelling part is extremely important. But it's not just about that visualization. It goes all the way back to source. And that's maybe a key point that I just want to drive home.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Soumya. I'd also like to share a webinar feedback survey as we answer the questions you guys submit. So we'd just like to know how you felt this webinar was and what you'd like to see in the future webinars. So please start answering this poll question. And in the meantime, I just see one last question, which is, how should we deal with limited data? Yeah, so that's the question. And if anyone would like to take it, please do.
So when you have limited data, you need to focus on the key metrics. You need to concentrate on what the most important data points you have. That will directly impact your business goals. You can also probably add any data from the external sources to leverage, like market trends. I can take the example of the excess sweet shop. She probably has just limited data from her database, right? But she added data from the external data sources where she's getting competitor data so that she can do a comparison based on it. And then you can also leverage on qualitative insights, which is like the customer feedback, the surveys, so on and so forth. So that also becomes a point that you can put out in your data visualization.
It's a great start. I also think along your data journey, also consider certain initiatives that you may want to put in place to get more information. So I'll give you an example. Our planning data, that historically resided in emails. So I also had a limited data set to pull from. But now in order to create the metric of being able to leverage of information to make more informed decisions, we needed to create a platform where we can collect data into our planning platform. And that's something that we built in SharePoint to meet that objective. So I think outside of what you could potentially do now, also think about how can you enhance your process through the collection of data to assist you in a year or 2 or 3.
Thank you, Chris. I think that's all the questions we have for today. Once again, thank you so much for attending this webinar, and thank you so much to the panelists Soumya Vadlamani and Chris Govender. We hope to see this collaboration for the next webinars in the series, and also thank you to BDO South Africa. Before you all drop out, please respond to the webinar feedback survey. This will help us with planning for the future webinars in the series and any other webinars that we have for the rest of the year. So Once again, thank you and hope to see you in a few weeks.